Hi, this is Jen Williams, and I'm going to be doing a close read of Who Says Women Can't Be Doctors? The Story of Elizabeth Blackwell, written by Tanya Lee Stone, illustrated by Marjorie Priceman. I chose this book to go along with our history unit in second grade social studies. This book is a great example of what life was like in the 1830s and how women's rights were different than they are now. I could also use this book as an for the genre biography when we're learning how to read biographies. The level of this book is 560, the Lexile level. That is on the high range of the second grade scale. The first thing I would point out to the children is that this is not your traditional informational book. The structure of this book is like a picture book, and it has illustrations, whereas the format of informational text is usually has photographs. And so I would prompt the children to think about, why do we not have photographs of Elizabeth Blackwell from the 1830s? So, who says women can't be doctors? The author starts off by explaining how she was born in a time when women were, back in the 1830s, there were lots of things girls couldn't be. Girls were only supposed to become wives and mothers, or maybe teachers or seamstresses. So I would point out, I would ask the children to think about, what do their mothers do, and did they think it was fair that women should only be teachers? We would also talk about what is a seamstress and how important factory life was back in the early 1800s. The author describes her as a tiny wisp of a girl who wanted to explore around every corner and who never walked away from a challenge. Using the words tiny wisp is like a simile for comparing her to somebody who's thin and fragile. All throughout the book, she overcomes adversity. That's the theme of this book. She's a strong girl who, even as a child, would carry her brother over her head and tried to be tough by sleeping on the floor. She goes against the grain and she does not act ladylike. She didn't always want to be a doctor. She hadn't always wanted to help people who are sick. And so I would pose to the children, why would somebody want to help people who are sick? Why would somebody want to become a doctor? It wasn't until her friend who got sick told her that she wanted to have a woman as a doctor, and that's what prompted her to become a doctor. And I would have the children think about, why would somebody want to be a doctor? And she couldn't stop thinking about it, and she dreamt about it and thought about it all day long. Here, the author uses different types of font, and expressions like, women are too weak for such hard work, and women aren't smart enough. And I would have the children think, what is the author trying to help us understand here about women in the 1830s? So she applied to many schools and she got 28 no's. And I would point out on this page how the author uses italics for the words cannot. Women cannot be doctors. They should not be doctors. This is the author's way of emphasizing that she was not supposed to become a doctor. The author also uses a simile. She was as stubborn as a mule. And we would talk about, what does that mean? And what does the author want us to understand about Elizabeth Blackwell? Another example of the author using font size for emphasis. She did get accepted to medical school. She went to the Geneva Medical School. The townspeople were not accepting of her, and we would talk about, how do you think that made her feel? Even in this illustration, you can see the buildings even look like they're in shock that she's at medical school. I would point out the style of clothing, the top hats as an artifact of life in the 1830s. On this page, the author uses an expression. The men are kind of taunting her. Their raucous laughter turned to silence as the ladylike Elizabeth took her seat. They wondered what kind of girl she was, the kind of girl who wouldn't take the bait. And so we would talk about that expression, take the bait, that she was too ladylike and she wouldn't engage in their foolishness. So she does become a doctor, but even the townspeople, they're just, the townspeople, it took the townspeople longer to accept her. Some people are afraid of anything new or different, not Elizabeth. And we would talk about why would some people be afraid of new things and different things. On January 23rd, 1849, Elizabeth graduated with the highest grades in the whole class. She had become the first woman doctor in America. Although many people were proud, others were angry. One doctor even wrote, "I hope for the honor of humanity that she will be the last." And so I would point that out to the children as this is an example of how people were not ready for women to become doctors, and what do they think the author's trying to tell us here. And of course, she was not the last female doctor. Many women have become doctors. And at the back of the book, there is a photograph of her from when she was 65 years old, and there's a little bit more of a traditional biography. I hope you enjoyed my close read of Who Says Women Can't Be Doctors?